Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another video. Recently we checked out the NVIDIA GeForce 2 GTS, and today we are looking at the difference between the 32 megabyte and 64 megabyte version. I had a look in the comment section and a couple of you were interested in seeing this topic. This video is rather short, a lot of benchmarking went into it, but in the end it's just a few graphs and not that much to talk about. So at the end we have something special, an advertisement placed in Halo promoting the GeForce 2 GTS. The machine used for these benchmark results was an A-Open motherboard with a Pentium 4 2.66. We've got 512 meg of RAM, a 120 gig hard drive, Windows 98 SE and the NVIDIA 45.23 drivers. So the very first game we're looking at is Expendable. Here we've got the 32 megabyte card. We can see the results here, and these are the resolutions. So we're going from 640 by 480 all the way up to 1920 by 1200. And usually what you're looking for is at higher resolutions, the 64 meg version should pull ahead. And that's what we're seeing here. So the orange line is for the 64 meg version, and basically up to 1024 by 768, there is no difference, but once we go up to 1280 by 1024 and higher, we can see that the 64 megabyte version of the NVIDIA GeForce 2 GTS pulls ahead. And here we have a look at texture compression on the 32 megabyte version of the card, and we're getting the identical results. So the game has an option menu and you can turn texture compression on and off, but it made no difference on the 32 meg version of the card, so there was no point in trying out on the 64 meg version. So I think that just means that the uncompressed textures fit nicely into the 32 megabytes of VRAM. Okay, the next game we have is MDK2. That's an OpenGL game, and what stands out is going from 53 at 1280 by 1024 to 1600 by 1200, a huge drop in frames from 53 to 12. And on the 64 meg version, that is not the case. So once again, starting at around 1280 by 1024, the 64 meg version of the card pulls ahead, and at these very high resolutions, it is more than 3 times as fast. And of course, we've got Quake 3. I've set the quality setting to the highest settings, as well as the texture quality to the highest setting, and very likely that means uncompressed textures, and likely they are larger than 32 megabytes, because even at 640 by 480, we can see the 64 meg version of the card being significantly faster, and then the gap widens as we increase resolution. And look at that, at 1600 by 1200, difference between 11 and 36 FPS, which is quite substantial. Serious Sam, this is quite a new game, and once again I went into the options and set the highest texture quality, and once again the 64 meg version is significantly faster even at 640 by 480, with the performance gap widening, and at 1600 by 1200 it's 4 FPS versus 20, so 4 FPS, that's really slow, and the 32 meg version of the card really struggling. Now Serious Sam has an option for texture compression as well, and if we turn it on, we can see that the textures now seem to be fitting nicely into the 32 megabyte VRAM, and the performance goes up. So the blue line is with texture compression off or with uncompressed textures, and because we only got 32 meg of VRAM, if you enable compression, that means the textures take up less space and performance goes up. So that's a nice way of getting more performance out of a 32 megabyte card. What is interesting, however, is that even on the 64 megabyte version, turning on texture compression, we still get a slight performance boost. So I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Maybe the assets, the textures are even larger than 64 megabytes, or maybe it just, maybe it just increases efficiency. And the gap actually narrows as you go up in resolution. At 1600 by 1200, there's only a 10% difference. And the last chart we're looking at is Serious Sam with texture compression turned on, comparing the 32 meg with the 64 meg card. And we can see at the lower resolutions, there is no difference. So it doesn't matter if you've got a 32 or 64 meg card, they will all perform the same. However, once you go to 1280 by 1024 and higher, the 64 meg version of the card still is slightly ahead. So there you have it, guys. These are the benchmark results for the GeForce 2 GTS with 32 megabytes versus the 64 megabyte model. At high resolution, you can see the 64 meg version doing better, and you can use uncompressed textures without losing performance in more games. Now, should you rush out and seek a GeForce 2 GTS with 64 megabytes? Well, not really, because the GeForce 2 GTS is just one out of many GeForce 2 cards. There's the GeForce 2 Pro, there's the GeForce 2 Ti, and of course the GeForce 2 Ultra. And all three of them are also available as a 64 megabyte version and are significantly faster because the memory is clocked quite a bit higher. However, if you happen to come across a GeForce 2 with 64 megabytes, it might be worth a little bit of a premium, and they are somewhat rare and harder to find. So if you're a collector, or basically if you're collecting video cards, this might be a very interesting card to pick up. And that's it for this video. It seems the 64 megabyte VRAM is the way to go, but let me know down below, what do you think? And next up is the advertisement in Halo promoting the NVIDIA GeForce 2 GTS.
After our ship broke apart and we evacuated to the surface of Halo, I was worried we'd left all our best hardware behind. No, I'm not talking about military hardware like jeeps, tanks, or dropships. I'm talking about graphics hardware. Now that we're waging an epic guerrilla war against the Covenant Horde, I'm sure glad I'm packing an NVIDIA GeForce 2 GTS. Aha!
Whoa, nice frame rate.
Thanks. With the power of the GeForce 2 GTS shading rasterizer, plasma burns look more realistic than ever before. And with NVIDIA's second generation geometry engine, I never have to worry about a jumpy firefight. Plus, the GeForce 2 GTS has support for 8 textures at full speed.
Not to mention cubic environment mapping.
Now that's one mean piece of alien-busting hardware lovin'. NVIDIA's GeForce 2 GTS and Bungie's Halo.
This is the future of gaming!
Hey, don't say we didn't warn you!